Welcome to Fantasy Football Aces. It's your boy, William Wolf. I'm back. And today, I want to tell y'all that they too fucking little for my boy Nico Collins. They too small. They way too little for my boy Nico Collins. Yes. Yeah. We go up fucking top. We're an elite red zone target. If you follow the show, if you follow Fantasy Football Aces, I've been telling y'all about Nico Collins since week 2. Go check the fucking tape. Not only that, if you go look at pre-draft videos that I have posted, and they're in this album of Fantasy Football Aces, you'll see all home runs that I've chosen as low-valued running backs and receivers that you could have grabbed in past year's draft, and you would have been dominating your league. Like Mike Evans. How good has Mike Evans been? Another dude who is too big. They too little for this man, Mike Evans. Or how about Michael Pittman Jr.? I told you about Michael Pittman Jr. These are guys that I said are the most undervalued receivers in fantasy before the year started. Go check the fucking tape. Michael Pittman Jr. is dominating. I think it would have been better with Trent Richardson too, to be honest with you. He locked in on Pittman a little bit even more than Minshew. And I think the running threat would have been harder to stop. Pittman Jr. would have had more one-on-ones all year. But nonetheless, Pittman Jr. has been fantastic. Mike Evans, fantastic. And the league winner, Nico Collins, is going to be just that down the stretch here. Let's see the tape right here, guys. Last week, Nico Collins, before Tank Dell got hurt, had a $130 on 2 big catches, like 2 60-yard, 50, 60-yard catches down the field. Bro, he's too big and fast. The man is just huge. Then Tank Dell goes out. He catches a touchdown, 12 targets, 9 receptions for a $191 and a touchdown. That's fucking dominant. I've been calling for this massive game for a while, guys. I've been saying that Nico Collins was way overdue. He's an explosive offense, and he's the number one real threat out there to catch the ball with an elite pass thrower in C.J. Stroud, who I've been calling elite since week 3. I really have. Week 2, really. But week 3 it was solidified. I said, listen, this kid CJ's for real. And then it kept going and going and going. Now the world knows it. The public talks about it. Everybody knows it. But go check the tape. I've been saying it from the beginning. I said CJ Stroud is going to be a superstar. He's still not quite there yet. He still has to be this great going down the stretch here and in the playoffs. But this dude Nico's for real, man. This is not a fluke. The guy is quick. He's very fast. He's huge. And he's got great hands. Those kind of intangibles, they equal a great fantasy football receiver. Look at T. Higgins and the career that he's had with Burrow. Imagine if he was the one with Burrow and there was no Jamar Chase. The kind of dominance that T. Higgins might have. And I think Nico's better than him. He's bigger. Like T, he's skinny. So like he doesn't really break tackles like that. He does, but not like Nico. But they both have the ability to just jump over anybody in the league because they're both 6'4". You know, Mike Evans is the same way. And Nico is a faster version of Mike Evans. I think maybe Mike in his younger years, I don't know. It's a debate, I guess, but I would say Nico's faster than him. It would have been faster than him his whole career. Very, very, very similar kind of receivers. And look at the way Mike Evans has dominated in his career. over 1,000 yards every single year. He's having probably his best year of his career this year. And when you have C.J. Stroud just absolutely slinging, now with no Tank Dell, you're looking at a guy, Nico, who down the stretch plays the Tennessee Titans in week 1 of fantasy. He plays the Tennessee Titans in the fantasy championship. So 2 times he plays that Mickey Mouse ass corner, that secondary. And then he has a tough game in between against Cleveland, who we just saw Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp dominate. So it can be beat. That secondary can beat. I know Denzel Ward is out, and likely Nico Collins will draw Denzel Ward in that matchup. But I don't, like I've been saying, man, if CJ Stroud actually targets Nico Collins, like literally just targets him, like locks in on the man, kind of like the way Allen locks in on Stephon Diggs, or the way Baker Mayfield's locking in on Mike Evans right now. Granted, he's not nearly as good of a quarterback as CJ Stroud, or the way Burrow will lock in the Chase sometimes, or let's give a better example, the way a peak Cooper Kupp had Stafford locked in on him, right? Like if that happens, there's not a cornerback in the league that can guard Nico Collins. He's 6'4" and he's fast. You can't fucking guard him. So without Tank Dell, who was really the one in the offense, only because they were like a 1A, 1B, but I would say Tank was the 1A simply because CJ really loved him. Like they were friends, like real close. You could tell like that they had a real bond, and Tank is really quick, so he's able to, like, if CJ breaks the pocket, he's able to like break route and improvise and get open, i.e. with like that deep touchdown that he had a couple weeks ago. But you saw this past week after Tank went down, Nico score on an absolutely gorgeous route in the back of the end zone. It looked like it was going to be a deep end, and he saw CJ about to break, and he shook the dude backwards and broke to the left, butt naked, for an easy touchdown throw. Now, there's going to be a lot of moments here down the stretch that they get inside the red zone and they're just going to throw jump balls to Nico Collins. They've already been doing it a little bit, but they haven't felt the need to do it a whole lot. Without Tank Dell, but trust me, he's going to get those opportunities, and those opportunities are going to cash in because he's that good. I never see Nico drop a ball. Like, I see him open quite a bit. Not only do they like to get him ball downfield where he's a top 5 receiver in yards per reception in the NFL, but they throw screen passes to him all the time, and those screens literally always turn into 10-yard gains. Go turn on the tape. I've been seeing it all year. He runs a big route tree. He runs a lot of crossers. He runs drags. I saw him run plenty of drags in the last 6 weeks where he's open underneath. He catches the ball, and he's so big and fast that, like, people are, frankly, they're scared to hit him, and I don't blame them. It's hard to hit this guy. He's so big. And, you know, he'll stiff arm little dudes, get off me, little man, you too small. And then he'll get a lot of yards after the catch. He's a monster. And I think that he is absolutely a league winner this year in fantasy with the Tank Dell injury. I already was very, very, very high on Nico Collins regardless of the injury or not. But now that Tank Dell is injured, you're looking at a massive target share. He's going to have probably between 12 and 16 targets a game. And those are very efficient, man, because he's that big and good. The only negative thing that you can take from this is that he's going to get doubled now at this point because they don't have to worry about no Tank Dell anymore. They need Robert Woods to step up. They need Michi to step up, the kid from Alabama. And they need Noah Brown to play well, which he didn't play well this past week. But they need him to step up as well, at least to keep Nico from getting double covered all the time. But I'm not afraid of that because Nico, he has a big route tree. He catches great slant routes. I see him run a lot of what I call a C route, which is essentially a slant go corner. I see him run that route very well. Obviously, he runs deep ends well. He runs drags well. Um, they don't throw a lot of goes to him, to be honest with you, a lot of streaks. They did yesterday, though, or Sunday, and he was successful on both of those plays on one-on-ones. So that's something that I've been saying. I said that before Sunday. I said, I'm surprised that they don't just throw the ball up to Nico when he's 30, 40 yards down the field when it's one-on-one, because he's going to come down with it. And that's exactly what they did on Sunday, which is so funny. And yeah, they were successful, 2 for 2. He had over 120, 30 yards in the first half before Tank Dell even got hurt. Now, let me grab my mouse. So, I'm going to talk about some matchups before I get into the Diamond League. If people actually tune into this show, I want them to see something that's more relevant to them than to me. And that's the waivers and the reactions to the NFL. From my perspective, an elite fantasy football analyst, an NFL expert, a man who is up over 50,000 on the year betting on the games. A guy who is on fire in his hot picks of the week, who I took San Francisco, and I told you to lay it all on the line against the Eagles with San Fran. I'm on a 5-week winning streak with my pick of the week. Been hot all year with an incredible record on Thursdays. My perspective ain't so bad if you just give it a shot and stop feeling yourself so much and just, join the bandwagon. My shit's riding to victories. You feel me? So let's talk about the Panthers-Buccaneers game first and foremost. I'm going to go straight down the line and tell you things that you need to know for your stretch here, the last week of the year in most leagues, and your fantasy football playoffs. If you're starting any Panther in fantasy, you are probably not a playoff team. I've told you that all year. Before the year started, I had a video about teams that you should avoid. The Panthers were one of them. Buccaneers, I did say before the year started to stay away from this team. I thought the offensive line was declining. I thought Baker Mayfield was going to be absolutely dreadful for the offense, and I just thought they were going to be a team you wanted to stay away from. As the year progressed, before the year started, I did say that Mike Evans was one of the most underrated, undervalued receivers in fantasy football going into the year, and that held to be true. And if you drafted Mike Evans in the later rounds or for $10 to $15 in salary drafts, you literally hit a whole fucking grand slam, and you are 100% in the playoffs with that kind of value. When you get Mike Evans that late with the way he is produced, 12 targets with 7 receptions for $162 and a touchdown, this guy is having a monster year. And Baker Mayfield is targeting him like no other. He's not spreading the ball around. Chris Godwin is nothing this year. There's nobody else producing except for Rachaad White. Rachaad White is one of the most undervalued running backs in DraftKings. He has been for 6 weeks. I'm sure they're going to raise his shit this coming week because it's been a crime what they've done the last 6 weeks, having him in the $5,000 and $6,000 range when he's a 75% plus snap share dog, 3-down horse who catches the ball out of the backfield, doesn't come off the field, and he's the goal line running back. It's absolutely a crime how low he's been in DraftKings, and I've been loving it myself. I've cashed every single DraftKings the last 4 weeks in my big buy-ins and one of the main reasons has been Rachaad White. If you have Rachaad White, you're happy and you're throwing him in your lineup every single week, and you're in good position in the playoffs. He has a decent schedule in the playoffs. He's got Green Bay, Jacksonville, and New Orleans. Those aren't horrible matchups. He's going to do what he does. They're not home run matchups like the Carolina and Colts that he's had back-to-back weeks, but Green Bay, Jacksonville, and New Orleans, they can beat them. You could beat those guys on the ground. Just look at what the Bengals did against Jacksonville last night. Green Bay has been vulnerable against the run all year. Pacheco had a good game against them. Similar kind of player at this point right now in the year. Pacheco getting 75% plus snaps. And the Saints, they're pretty good against the run, but it's a division game, and just the volume that Rashad has in general, he's a great player. I wish I had him on my team instead of DeAndre Swift right now, to be completely honest. That's the kind of value that's the way I look at Rashad White. He's elite. Moving on to the Bengals-Jaguars game, you suffered an injury with Christian Kirk. I think Zay Jones is somebody that you can be targeting in waivers this week. I wouldn't go crazy with him this late in the year. Most likely you don't have a lot of fab. So if you're desperate for a receiver, maybe grab him, but I don't think I would start him. You obviously have Trevor Lawrence out. I don't really want to start anybody on the Jaguars going forward. I don't want to start Ridley. I don't want to start Ingram. I don't really want to start Zay Jones. And Travis Etienne's stock's going down, man. He's definitely lost his 80 to 90% snap share that he was getting the first 10 weeks of the year, first 9 weeks of the year. Obviously a little bit banged up. He's a smaller guy, and they're working in Johnson probably about 30% of the snaps, which is still very strong for Travis Etienne. He's still very elite. But now that they don't have a quarterback, good defenses are going to make sure that they stop Etienne, and I think his stock is down, but he's still a pass catcher. He still gets, 70%, 65% snaps. He's still very good, and he has a fairly tough schedule for the playoffs with Baltimore, Tampa Bay, but then his championship, if you made it that far, would be Carolina, and that would be a home run in the championship. But Baltimore and Tampa Bay, I can't lie, those are going to be very difficult. They could cause you to lose. That's the reason why a few weeks ago when somebody asked me if they should trade for Travis Etienne, I said no. Bengals, you're very happy if you have Jamar Chase. He got a lot of volume yesterday. He played well. His day was really made on that bomb, 76-yard touchdown. Without that touchdown, though, he still had 10 receptions and 70-something yards. They were moving the ball good. So I think that he's definitely a great wide receiver 2 right now, even arguably a wide receiver 1 with Browning. I don't think Browning's going to be able to play like that anymore. I think that is more actually to tell you how bad the Jaguars' defense is right now than anything. Mixon, it was nice to see him have such a productive day. 19 rushes, 68 yards, two tutties, but he lost snaps too. It looks like this late in the year, those guys that were like 80 to 90% snap share kind of guys, the Mixons, the Travis Etiennes, those guys are all dying down to like around 70% now. And the kid Brown, Chase Brown, he came in and he looked great. I think he's actually somebody you should probably target in the waivers this weekend, or today, I should say. I'm sorry. And pick him up just in case Mixon gets hurt, because this kid could maybe be a league winner himself if let's say hypothetically Mixon got hurt and he got 90% snaps in your fantasy playoffs. He looked explosive. He was fast, and he took a ton of snaps from Mixon, like a ton of snaps. And to be honest with you, Mixon's hypothetically, most games they're not going to be in, which they play in the fantasy playoffs, Minnesota, Pittsburgh, and Kansas City. Luckily for Mixon holders, those are 3 teams that they're going to be in close games with. And I believe that Mixon actually, he's going to be a solid fantasy football playoff running back for you during that stretch. Your biggest concern is Chase Brown stealing those snaps, but if they're in competitive games, him getting 19 rushes and 6 catches on 7 targets is massive. Huge day for him. So, T. Higgins and Boyd, you're sitting them. You can't play those guys at all. As far as the Jaguars are concerned as a team, before this going into this week, I would have said that they were possibly a Super Bowl contender in the AFC. But after watching last night's game, I'm way off board with them. Their defense is a liability, and a team like that with a defense that can't stop a nosebleed, they can't stop a Bengals offense without Burrow. I think that they're really in a lot of trouble. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence got hurt, but even if he didn't get hurt, they would have been a big team to bet against, in my opinion, in the playoffs with the way that defense looked. Moving on to the Chiefs-Packers, Jordan Love has been playing very good football. Quietly a top 10 fantasy football quarterback this year. He's top 8 to be exact. Over the last 4 weeks, he's been a top 5 quarterback in all of fantasy. He is playing lights out football. I think Christian Watson going down is going to hurt him as a quarterback for fantasy, but he is still going to be good overall. You like the fact that he takes off every once in a while. He is a low-key threat to take off on the read option. He does it when they least expect it, and he always breaks for like 20, 30 yards. I think he's averaging about 15 to 20 yards rushing per game every week. That's an extra couple points to your team every week. He's been throwing for over 250 every single week. He's getting a lot of 3 and 4 touchdown games right now, mostly 2 or 3, but a lot of 3 touchdown games. Guys like Dobbs and Reed and Watson, let's say hypothetically Watson didn't get hurt, they're decent plays, but it's sort of like the Kansas City offense where you're not really sure where the wealth is going to be distributed to. I'm not bullish on playing any of those Packers receivers, but I am okay with you starting Jordan Love in the playoffs. He has a great matchups the next couple weeks. He really does. You got, let's look at this schedule. He has the Tampa Bay Bucks in the opening round, the Carolina Panthers in the semis, and the Minnesota Vikings in the championship. And then he plays the Giants this coming week. I think you start Jordan Love the next 4 weeks and you can win a fantasy football championship. Let's say hypothetically, you've kind of been having him, I don't know, if you're making the decision between quarterbacks, like you got guys that are like middle of the road, even a quarterback that maybe has bad matchups in the playoffs, I think that you're perfectly fine throwing out Jordan Love. He's guaranteed most likely, I'd say at this point, to give you 20 points. And then your ceiling is in the 30s. It's possible he rushes for a touchdown. And like I said, it's hard to predict where the wealth is going to be spread in that offense. But you're a sure bet with Jordan Love. And I think with Aaron Jones coming back, that gives him another pass-throwing threat. I don't think Aaron Jones or Dillon are great fantasy football running back plays at this point in the year. You're going to start him as your flex possibly if you have to. But as for Jordan Love, they're nice little weapons. He distributed the ball everywhere the last few games. A lot of players catching the ball. You got Dobbs with 5 targets, Christian with 9, Wicks with 4, the tight end Kraft with 6, Jaden Reed with 5, the other tight end Heath with 2, and Dillon had a target, which you would imagine Aaron Jones having 3 or 4 targets as well in this offense. I think that if you're desperate, you can start Dobbs this coming weeks while Watson is out. And the same thing goes for Jaden Reed. I think they're decent third receivers if you're in a 3 receiver, 2 running back flex league. But if you're in a 2-receiver flex league with 2 running backs, I say stay away from Packers weapons. But you're more than okay to start Jordan Love. That's the way I feel about this offense. On the Chiefs side of the ball, Pacheco's a home run right now until McKinnon gets back. He's been getting a full workload. He's their pass catcher and their runner. He's elite right now. In DraftKings, while McKinnon is out, if he's not, he didn't play on the 1 p.m. 4 p.m. slate. But if he was on the 1 p.m. 4 p.m. slate, Pacheco was a must play, must start, kind of like Rashad White, must plays, undervalued, 3-down horse dogs. But when McKinnon comes back, which I think is this coming week, he will go probably down to 60% again snaps. McKinnon will get 20 and change, and so will Clyde Edwards. McKinnon is an elite pass catcher, and frankly, I think the Chiefs are missing him a little bit because he makes an impact in the passing game for Mahomes, especially the way Mahomes will scramble and improvise. Like, McKinnon was pretty good at finding the open places and making plays for Pat Mahomes. I think if you have Pat Mahomes, you're definitely frustrated with the year in general. I said this, 3 or 4 weeks ago. The Chiefs' identity as an offense is much different than it was last year as a team and an offense. As a team, they can beat you with their defense. Their defense is extremely strong, especially when Burton, the linebacker, is healthy. He's been out, which has been killing them. It's really the reason why they lost to the Packers. And let me say his name right, he deserves his flowers, especially with the play he made in the Super Bowl last year. And I've been a huge, huge fan of this kid for a few years now. Nick Bolton. He is a superstar linebacker, and he has been out. And him being out against the Packers is the sole reason why the Packers won that game. That is how much of an impact he has on the Kansas City Chiefs and their defense. It's like losing Ray Lewis. I know that Ray Lewis is the best middle linebacker of all time, but that's the kind of loss that was for the Kansas City Chiefs and their defense. It's part of the reason why they've struggled the last couple of weeks defensively. They'll get him back, though, and then this is a Super Bowl favorite in the AFC. Mark my words. That's the team you want to bet on in the AFC. Is when they get a healthy Nick Bolton, this is the best team in the AFC, and their identity is different right now with Nick Bolton. And when they get McKinnon back, one of the few things I've been wrong about with the Kansas City Chiefs before the year started was I said that Sky Moore or Kadarius Toney was going to be a superstar in fantasy football. And where I was wrong is that it ended up being Rashee Rice. And I know the word superstar is a little bit exaggerated as far as Rashee Rice is concerned. He is very good, and he is dominating right now. He had 9 targets this past week. He got 80% snaps 2 weeks ago, but this week against Green Bay, he was back down in the 60s. But he definitely has solidified himself as the wide receiver 1 in that offense, and he is a must start every week if you have him. I would put him in the 3rd receiver category. So if you have 3 receivers, 2 running backs, and a flex, he is a very, very, very solid 3rd receiver for your team. And essentially what I'm saying is that I was wrong about which receiver was going to be good in this offense, but it inevitably, the math had showed that losing Juju Smith-Schuster and Mecole Hardman for a little bit, he's back obviously, in that offense, the people who ended up picking up the slack where I was wrong and thinking it was Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney, it ended up being Rashee Rice and Isaiah Pacheco because they've changed their identity as an offense. He is a more dominant runner they're a better team at running the ball this year than last year, and that's the way they're beating you. A lot of these yards that because Mahomes was over 300 every game last year. This year he's in the 200 range most of the time with his yards, and that's because Pacheco is racking up yards, racking up a ton of yards. I think Matt Nagy, I think losing Eric Bieniemy was tough for the Kansas City Chiefs. Matt Nagy isn't him. I saw him with the Chicago Bears personally, and he was not a good offensive coordinator for us. And to be honest, I think that he is one of the detriments of this team a little bit right now. I think Andy Reid probably needs to get his hand on that offense even more than he already does, assuming that Matt Nagy's having some kind of influence. But overall, they will be a Super Bowl contender and the AFC representative, in my opinion, once they get Nick Bolton back, the middle linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs. As far as fantasy is concerned, Pacheco and Rashee Rice are home runs. And as I started before I went on this rant, I think you're going to stick with Mahomes. You are a little frustrated with him. It's not the year that it has been, but with New England, Las Vegas, and Cincinnati in your playoffs, I think, Pat Mahomes is as good of a bet as anybody, right? I'd be more than happy to be throwing him out there as my QB. I mean, that's just the bottom line. Moving on to the Browns and Rams. Joe Flacco, he helped a lot of these players out offensively as far as their value is concerned in fantasy football. He looked good. If I was the Browns, I would stick with him. He was inefficient, 23 for 44, but I would stick with Joe Flacco personally. He looked good to me. I thought that he gives them a better chance to win than the other young quarterbacks. So Elijah Moore, if Flacco continues to be the quarterback, he's somebody that you could possibly look to be a flyer for you if you're desperate. But again, man, I'm going to re-emphasize this. More than likely, if you're going after these kind of waiver guys that I'm mentioning right now, you're not going to be in the playoffs anyways. At this point in the year, the cream of the crop is there. Mostly all the good players are on rosters already, and they're starting for playoff teams. So unless you're a guy that's just going to squeak in the playoffs, I've seen miracles happen, trust me. Once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen. So these are the kind of guys, I guess, that you could look out for that could possibly, you can get lucky with in the playoffs and pull off upsets. I think Elijah Moore is one of those. He had 12 targets. Let's say hypothetically Flacco stays the quarterback. Who knows, man? Moore might go on a run. And he's used to Moore. Keep in mind, guys, he was throwing to him for the Jets last year. That was one of his players. And ironically, he was one of the players that was complaining that he wasn't getting the ball because Flacco was locked in on Garrett Wilson. But let's say, he locks in on Moore right now. And, 12 targets is elite. So keep an eye on him. I would try to pick him up because if Flacco stays the quarterback, who knows? On the Rams side of the ball, Puka Nacua is a fucking dog. Had a 50-something yard rush called back on a bullshit soft hold, first of all. Second of all, I thought he was out for the year. I was crying because he's part of my team. And he's a fucking dog. He comes back. I don't think he's going to miss any time. He's one of those kind of players that you can't keep this man off the field, bro. He's going to have to tear an ACL or some shit. He runs hard as fuck. He caught the 70-yard bomb. I told somebody last couple days ago before Sunday started, they asked me, should I start Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp? I told him Cooper Kupp because Puka Nacua doesn't have the chance of catching a 70-yard, 80-yard bomb. Boy, was I fucking wrong. Puka caught that ball on the run. He outran every single one of those defenders to the end zone for 60 yards, and those guys were not catching him. He was gone. He literally was gone. Them dudes had no chance of catching him. Puka's running reverses and running by people on the sideline. I know guys run 4.6, 4.7 in the combine, whatever they run. Bro, when these guys put on pads and helmet, it's called football speed. And I'll tell you what, there's guys in the league that they might not run the fastest 40, but I promise you, you ain't catching them on the football field. Jerry Rice is a perfect example of that. And I'm not comparing Puka Nacua to Jerry Rice, but when you compare football speed, I mean, that's the way it translates right there. Like Jerry ran a slow 40, but these guys when they catch the ball and they got pads on and a helmet and they got somebody chasing them, boy, them boys run. That's what I'm trying to tell you, man. Pat Mahomes even said that in a famous quote recently. He's like, I might not be the fastest, but if you have somebody chasing me, I'm fast as hell. And Puka Nacua he's the top dog in this offense right now, man. 7 targets, but he was out for, a significant part of the second quarter. He's the guy getting reverses right now instead of Cooper Kupp. He's getting a couple rushes a game at this point. 2 rushes for 34 yards this past week. With the emergence of Kyren Williams, it's doing nothing but helping the offense. They look tremendous. I think Matt Stafford's. I was raving about him all year, and kind of, he got hurt and he kind of let me down a couple weeks when Justin Fields was hurt and Matthew Stafford was my sub-in quarterback. He let me down, frankly, and he's part of the reason why I lost one of those weeks when I was on a losing streak. But right now he's heating up, and he is exactly what I told you everybody he was going to be. And that was a guy who has an elite weapons around him, and he can really sling it. He's a number 1 pick. He's a Super Bowl winner. He's an elite pass thrower. As some would say, he can really spin it. And with Puka, Cooper, Atwell, Higbee, who's banged up now, and Kyren Williams, yeah, man, he has a lot of weapons. And Puka is the number 1 weapon on this offense outside of Kyren Williams. Cooper Kupp is probably an equal, but I think at this point Puka is more healthy. Puka looks better, and he's doing it all right now, man. He actually had a guy burnt on a stop and go this past week too, and Stafford underthrew him a little bit, or else I think that could have been a bomb for a touchdown. His matchups in the playoffs are not the best matchups, but they're good. He gets Washington, which is a slam dunk in the first round, but then he gets the Saints in the semis. That's going to be tough. They've been playing receivers really well all year in New Orleans. And then he has a New York Giants team in the championship. So the Rams in general have a pretty nice playoff schedule. As a team, they're dangerous, and I think that they are a team to monitor. They have a really tough matchup against Baltimore this coming week, but I don't think matchups matter with Puka Nacua right now. He's matchup proof. Moving on to the 49ers Eagles, my pick of the week. I'm not going to talk a lot about this, guys, because these two teams, they're so obvious when it comes to fantasy. But I will say the 49ers are the best team in the league. I don't think that I'm making a statement right now that is shocking. That's consensus opinion at this point. Everybody believes that they are. They went on a little losing streak. I think it was 3 in a row, and that was coinciding with Debo being out. But Debo's back. He's their best player on their team outside of Christian McCaffrey. And the way they're able to scheme it up when they have both him and Christian McCaffrey is just impossible to stop. Ayuk and Kittle they're amazing as well. Purdy's having an MVP type of year. Him and Dak are going to be probably fighting it out for the MVP along with Jalen Hurts. I personally would put Christian McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill in that conversation as well, but usually they give it their quarterbacks. As far as fantasy is concerned, you're going to start every single player on the 49ers without hesitation. Ayuk, Debo, Christian McCaffrey, and Kittle, along with Purdy. So if you have those guys, start them. They're gonna possibly win you a championship this year. On the Philadelphia Eagles side of the ball, same thing. You're starting Hurts, you're starting Devontae, A.J. Brown. When Goddard comes back, you'll start him unless you have a better option. And you're not sitting DeAndre Swift. His playoff schedule is absolutely gorgeous. These Philadelphia Eagles schedule is one of the best there is when it comes to it. After they had a tough stretch against San Francisco and Dallas here back-to-back weeks, and they played the toughest schedule in the NFL this year with Kansas City over there in Germany. They played Dallas. They obviously played that Dallas defense twice. They played Miami's defense. They played the Jets defense. They played Tampa Bay's defense. Even Minnesota, who's been playing pretty good D this year. But in the playoffs, they play Seattle, New York Giants, and Arizona. Does not get any better than that for DeAndre Swift, for Hurts, A.J. Brown, and Devontae Smith. You're very excited for the playoffs. I think Eagles holders are going to be winning fantasy football championships this year. They're going to put up massive numbers. I think DeAndre Swift is the biggest beneficiary of this easy schedule because the running backs, they're most vulnerable to tough matchups. As you can see against San Francisco, he put up a dud. Hope he's okay because he got hit really hard. I still haven't heard full news about that. I don't think it was a concussion. I'm praying it wasn't a concussion because then at least he won't miss this week. But if he misses this week against Dallas all you need him to do is come back against Seattle. So slam dunk playoff schedule for the Philadelphia Eagles. As far as them as a team is concerned, they're the second best team in the NFC. I've said that all along. They have a puncher's chance to beat the 49ers in a rematch if they get them at home again. If they have to travel to San Fran, they're going to get blowed out again. Moving on to the Colts-Titans, I talked about Michael Pittman to start the show. He's great. He could possibly win you a fantasy championship this year. That's how good he is. Derrick Henry, he has a very nice playoff schedule. He has been playing well. I think you're excited about Derrick Henry going into the playoffs. Hopkins, I don't really want any part of the offense except the fact that they play Houston, Seattle, and pretty good. It's not bad. It's about as good as you're going to get for the Tennessee Titans and their offense is concerned. It's not a good offense, but you're going to start Hopkins. There's a chance you have a team that he's your third receiver. And he's been doing decent. He had a good game this past week. He had a touchdown the week prior to that. He's on a good stretch. 12 targets this past week, 75 yards and a tutty. The week prior to that, he had a tutty as well, I believe. No, he struggled against Carolina, but the week prior to that against Jacksonville, he had a touchdown. So he's been good, man. I think you're okay with him being your third receiver. And if you're in a two running back flex league, you don't want to be starting DeAndre Hopkins, but you're good with starting Derrick Henry. As far as Moss is concerned, he is what he is, bro. He's overrated as far as like what he did this year while JT was out. And I know a lot of fantasy football, I know the community, it was pretty excited about what Zach Moss can bring to the table with JT out again. But I think you'll be a little underwhelmed. He's not that good at football, and he underperformed against Tennessee. The Colts, they get Pittsburgh, Atlanta, and Las Vegas in the fantasy football playoffs. I think if you're going to have to start Zach Moss against Pittsburgh and Atlanta in the first two rounds, he's probably going to be one of the reasons why you get bounced. I really would only want to start Pittman Jr. in this offense, but I can see Zach Moss being a nice flex for somebody. So he is somebody, but you're going to be disappointed with his matchups in the playoffs. Moving on to the Chargers, Patriots. I'm not going to talk a lot about these two teams. If you don't have Keenan Allen, you're not starting or Eckler. You're not starting anybody in this offense. I guess Herbert too. I'm sorry. So Herbert, Eckler, and Keenan Allen. But I think all three of these guys, their stock is diminishing a little bit. Keenan Allen is the one out of the three that you're still super optimistic about because of the target share. But Herbert's struggling because of the lack of weapons right now. The team is declining. And Eckler is, for whatever reason, just off right now. So I think that if you can stay away from them, you're you're going to be, that's your best bet. And I guess I'm speaking from a DraftKings perspective when I say that, because if you have them in a week-to-week league, you're going to be starting them. I don't want to start anybody else on this team besides those three that I mentioned, and I'm not really excited about them besides Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is elite, and he'll continue to be elite. Their schedule is the Las Vegas, Buffalo, and Denver. I think for receivers, that's a pretty good schedule. I think Keenan Allen is going to be nice down the stretch here. Eckler, hopefully you are going to make the playoffs, because most likely if you have Eckler stock, you're in trouble because he missed a bunch of weeks this year, and then he hasn't been good a bunch of weeks this year. So I'd be surprised if you make the playoffs if you had Eckler. On the Patriots side of the ball, you're not starting anybody. You could take a fly on Pop Douglas if he plays this Thursday off concussion protocol, but I don't think he's going to play. I think he's going to miss another week. And then after that, you're in the fantasy playoffs. I don't know how you can throw Pop Douglas in, and I'm a big Pop Douglas believer. The offense is just so dreadful, and Ramondre Stevenson, their best offensive player, is going to be out now. I don't see how you can start anybody. I don't think they're going to get any. I think that they're a heavy target to face in defenses for fantasy football. Like if you can find a defense that's playing the Patriots, that's going to be a home run right now. I think that, obviously you can start Zeke as your flex if you need to, and he is a guy that you're going to be targeting waivers this weekend, or this, I keep saying this weekend, but today you'll be targeting Zeke Elliott, but you're not, I wouldn't be optimistic about it at all. He's kind of one of those guys that you're going to start in your flex because he's going to have volume, and you're just hoping he gets a touchdown. You're hoping he gets 3 or 4 catches. And, most likely that is a pretty good flex option in a deep 12-man league with 3 receivers, 2 running backs, and a flex. It's very difficult to have a complete team. The elite teams that are competing for a championship right now, they do have a filled-out roster, as I do, and they wouldn't even be starting Zeke Elliott if he was on their team. But if you're a team struggling to get in the playoffs and your flex has been your weak part of your team all year, he's a good spot guy right now. It's just that offense is not going to get a lot of first downs, and I'm not going to go in depth about that because that's one of the philosophies of fantasy football aces, and if you don't follow the show, then that's on you. Moving on to the Lions Saints. God, man, I was hoping Jameson Williams got up to 90% snaps, but he didn't. He was in the 60s again. It's just not a guy you can start until they give him 90% snaps, and they should be on that double reverse. He was the fastest player I've ever seen run in my life on that play, and I'm not exaggerating because I'm a Jameson lover, which I am. I am a Jameson lover. That's my dude. That's my guy. That's my boy. But man, just objectively, like I've never seen a guy run that fast on that double reverse. It was like mind-boggling speed. It's true too. He ran a 4.2, man. He's elite speed. He's fully healthy from that ACL. They need to be getting him the ball more, and I'm saying that as a St. Brown holder. I say this past week against the Saints. The Saints are vulnerable against tight ends, which is part of the reason why Laporta had a good game. I think going forward, as far as the Lions concerned, their offense is elite, and I think that you're going to see guys really do well in that offense based on what the defense is vulnerable against. So it's important to monitor who they're playing down the stretch here, which is the Denver, Broncos, Minnesota, and Dallas in the fantasy football playoffs. And that means that you can predict that Montgomery and Gibbs will be great in the first round. You would think that the other guys like St. Brown, who just gets a lot of volume and receptions, he'll be fine against them as well. Against Minnesota, you'd have to I believe that they're I forget. Let me see. I think this is important to look at. Yeah, Minnesota's bad against receivers. So that would be a spot like that you would assume in the semifinals that St. Brown has a big game. And I think that they're a lot better against the run. So Gibbs and Montgomery, you should temper your expectations in that semifinal matchup. The point I'm trying to make is Detroit, they're so good all around that they're going to beat the defense where the defense is vulnerable. And that's the reason why you saw Laporta have a big game against the Saints this past week. That's where the defense was vulnerable. That's where they attacked. And he was open all day in the middle of the field, and Goff was finding him, right? So they were double teaming St. Brown pretty much the whole game too, by the way. The Saints are going to be a smart defense like that where they're going to take away who they think is your number one option. But overall, as far as the Lions are concerned, you're going to be starting Gibbs, Montgomery, Laporta, and St. Brown auto start. You're excited about it, and you want to keep monitoring this Jameson Williams situation, guys, because if he can get up to 90% snaps, he's a must start in this offense. Goff, I don't mind you starting him. The problem with him is just that they run it in so much that he becomes a little less valuable. And it's because he's not a running quarterback that hurts you. It's kind of like the Ravens offense, but you don't have Lamar Jackson. You don't have a rushing ability like Lamar does. So Goff's a really tough start right now. He's in an elite offense, but they score running the ball so much. It's kind of what's hurt Tua as well in the Miami Dolphins offense is that they rush it in so much that it's been hurting his fantasy value. Very comparable, those three guys, their offenses, they're very comparable. And the difference between Lamar and the other two is that Lamar will run a lot. So he can make up for not getting those throwing touchdowns with like 60 yards rushing, right? That's like 1.5 touchdowns thrown. On the Saints side of the ball, my boy Taysom Hill, he got up to 40-something% snaps this past week against the Lions. He had like 3 or 4 goal line carries. He had 1 touchdown, 13 rushes for 59 yards. Easily could have been 3 touchdowns. They took him out at the inch twice for Kamara, which is actually extremely discouraging for me. It's one of the main reasons I want to start Taysom Hill is because I felt like he was going to keep getting those goal line carries. He runs it down to the inch, and they take him out in favor for Kamara. That's actually the complete opposite of the reason why I've been advocating to start him. But still, though, at that with this kind of volume, you're looking at a guy who's playing tight end for you, who's getting flex value. 13 rushes at 4.5 yards a carry and getting goal line carries is extremely good. You could almost compare that to what like Montgomery's doing. He's getting a couple catches a game too, which he had 2 targets with 2 catches this past week. It's almost identical to a running back who's getting 40 to 50% of snaps and getting goal line carries. But his runs are even more efficient than a running back. It appears he's one of the leaders in the NFL in yards per carry. It's hard to stop that shit for some reason, even when people know it's coming. And he throws the ball a couple times a game. He actually had a bomb to Olave, who Olave kind of dropped it, and you can argue Taysom Hill underthrew him a little bit. That could have been a touchdown. And they throw the ball. He had another throw. He was 0 for 2 throwing the ball. And they were both good plays, good throws. And, I think they're going to mix that in quite a bit. I think Jameson Williams, if Derek Carr is going to be out with concussion, I think they can even ramp up Taysom Hill's value even more. As I said, when I was advocating for this guy, his schedule is very sexy with Carolina, the Giants, Rams, and Bucks. The next 4 weeks, the Giants, Rams, and Bucks being his playoff schedule. I think the Giants in the round 1 is an absolute slam dunk for Taysom Hill in the playoffs. Against the Rams, it's going to be a little bit more scary, but I still would start him because at that point, you're probably going to be on a run where he scores 14 or 15 points a week against Carolina and the Giants. So it's going to be hard to sit him against the Rams, especially because I think they'll win both of those games, and they'll be in a very competitive, meaningful game against the Rams, and they're going to try to lean on Taysom Hill as they did against the Lions. They almost pulled off that victory. Olave and Kamara, they're must starts. You got to start them every week. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Moving on to the Falcons, Jets. Jets, I don't want to talk about them. If you're starting Garrett Wilson or Breece Hall, you're probably in trouble. Their offense stinks. I told you stay away from those guys. I also been saying for a long time now, when all the Breece Hall fucking fantasy community lovers, oh, Breece Hall, he's so good, he's going to be a league winner. No, I told you. When the team can't move the ball on third, they can't move the chains on third down, your running back, your receiver, your fantasy football assets, they suck. They're trash. You need an offense that can move the ball on third down. You need guys that are going to enter the red zone, the money area for fantasy football at a high rate. And the Jets are the polar opposite of that. They're bad. You don't want to be starting any of these guys. You want to avoid them in DraftKings as well. On the Falcons side of the ball, you really only want to be starting Bijan Robinson, and you should temper your expectations with him. He has an elite playoff schedule. That is the bright side to Bijan Robinson. Elite playoff schedule. Carolina, Indianapolis in the first 2 rounds. It does not get any better than that. That's the dream. Anybody who's gone on that 2-week stretch, you've seen a bunch of guys have that actually too. It's weird. Derrick Henry had that. My guy Tony Pollard, actually he didn't play the Colts, but he played 2 bad running defenses in a row as well. And there's been several other guys that have played that Carolina-Indianapolis matchup back-to-back, which is super odd. That happens to be Bijan's first 2 rounds of his playoffs, so he is an absolute home run in those 2 games. But besides him, you don't really want to start anybody on Atlanta. Drake London, try to stay away from him if you can. If he's your third receiver, I'm okay with it. But if you're in a 2-receiver, 2-running back flex league, don't start Drake London. Don't start him in DraftKings. Stay away from him is what I'm trying to stay. I guess when I'm speaking a lot of times too, when I say stay away from players, I'm more speaking on a DraftKings perspective. I think I want y'all to understand that. In a weekly, I understand that a lot of times you have to start a guy no matter what. And if Drake London's your third receiver, you're probably not going to win a championship, but it's not bad. It's not horrible. Yeah, that really covers Atlanta. You don't want to start anybody else on that team. Cardinals, Steelers, Kyler Murray is struggling. He has a very difficult schedule by San Francisco, Chicago, and his playoff schedule is San Francisco, Chicago. That's murderer's row. And I know some people out there who are ignorant, they're going to go, wait, Chicago's a good matchup. And I hear a lot of like quote unquote experts still saying out loud on their podcast that when they play the Bears, it's a good matchup. You could not be any more wrong. If these guys, they don't watch the games, they don't watch the snaps, they don't watch the film like I do. The Bears defense is elite right now. It's a top 5 defense in the NFL right now when healthy. They got one of the best secondaries in the league with Jalen Johnson, Kyler Gordon, and Eddie Jackson, and the fucking other young safety. It starts with a B. God, I'm embarrassed that I'm not thinking of his name. Safety, Jaquan Brisker. Their secondary is elite. Ever since those guys got healthy and they had and simultaneously got Montez Sweat from Washington, this defense turned into an elite defense because they already were locking the run with Tremont Edwards and Edmonds and TJ Edwards. Those 2 linebackers, absolutely brilliant additions by Poles, the GM for the Bears. He's been doing a phenomenal job. I can't. He's one of the best GMs in the NFL, and it's not even a question right now. Him and the Eagles GM, they're elite. Those 2 pickups were just amazing. They both have played great football. TJ Edwards is leading the league in tackles, I believe. There's no running on the Bears. And now that their secondary is healthy with that scheme that Eberflus is brought over to the Bears from Indianapolis, they cause a lot of turnovers. It's the Tampa 2 scheme. It's obviously morphed more into like, a mix of different things, but it is a base cover 2, and they will play a lot of 2. You see the picks that Jalen Johnson's had in recent games. They were in 2. Some of the picks you've seen the linebackers get in the last couple of games were cover 2. And that's part of the reason why they're able to lock up the run so well. It's just a great scheme, and he's got a lot of pieces right now. And if you're playing the Bears, you're in trouble. So that was a little bit of a tangent and rant, but the point is that Kyler Murray has a tough playoff schedule, extremely tough. That goes the same thing with James Conner and any of those weapons. I think outside of McBride, you really don't want to start anybody on this team, and that includes Kyler Murray. I think there's better options out there like Jordan Love, Matthew Stafford. There's a few others that I would start over Kyler Murray down in my playoff stretch. On the Steelers side of the ball, I think the conversation's very similar. I don't want to start anybody on the Steelers. They're dog shit on offense. I put them in the same conversation as the Jets. I put them in the same conversation as a lot of these really bad offenses. I know people were excited about Jaylen Warren. Even I was a little bit, but I always said that I tempered my expectations with him because he's in a bad offense. It doesn't matter how much of a firecracker he is. It doesn't matter how explosive he is. It doesn't matter if he's announced as the starter. They're in a bad offense that can't move the ball, can't move the chains on third down. Pickens, Johnson, Deontay Johnson, Warren, and Najee Harris, they're all bums. You don't really want them in fantasy. I told you before the year, do not start anybody on the or draft anybody on the Steelers. And if you drafted them, you have to start them, and most likely you're going to die with them. And hopefully you're not starting them. And like I said, I'm speaking a lot from a DraftKings perspective. Don't pick up any of these guys and put them in your lineup for DraftKings. And you want to be sitting these guys in your fantasy playoffs if you have the opportunity to sit them. Moving on to the Dolphins Commanders, it's pretty obvious. You know how I feel about the Dolphins. Nothing has changed. They have a very nice playoff schedule with the Jets in Dallas in the first two rounds. When I say great, I mean more or less for Raheem Mostert and Achane. And specifically when it comes to playing the Jets. But Tua, you're in trouble against the Jets in the first round, and Tyreek Hill, he is matchup proof. So you played Tyreek Hill no matter what, and that's the bottom line with Miami. When they play Dallas, that's going to be a shootout. That's the semifinals. I think you're extremely excited to start everybody against Dallas. When I say everybody, I mean Achane, Mostert, Waddle, Tyreek, Tua. All those guys are going to be slams against Dallas in the semifinals. And then in the finals, if they play Baltimore, that's going to be tough. But at that point, when you're in the finals, it doesn't matter. Once you're in the finals, you can make a deal or just ride because you're most likely have a very good chance to win a championship at that point, obviously. As far as Raheem Mostert and Achane is concerned, I know the Achane stands out there. They are extremely excited. They should be. But I do want to let the public know, if you do watch my show, that Mostert looked better than Achane in that game. And I'm speaking objectively. I know I'm a Raheem Mostert owner and opposed to the Achane owners out there, but just being truthful, he looked a lot better. It was a blowout, and they decided not to play Raheem Mostert in the second half, and they gave Achane the work, essentially just showing the world that he's healthy and that he's going to be a factor in this offense. But he didn't look better than Mostert running the ball. He wasn't more efficient. As a matter of fact, if Raheem Mostert got all those snaps that Achane got in the second half, you probably would have saw Raheem Mostert have a higher yards per carry. Raheem looked unbelievable in that game. In the first half, he made so many nice runs with great vision and power, opposed to Achane, who was kind of getting boggled up a little bit. I do think that Achane, the more upside to him in general is that he has he catches the ball more out of the backfield. Bree, are you the next guest? Welcome. Bree Wolf. Bree, what do you think about the Achane Raheem Mostert situation? You have anything to say? Yeah? Bree's getting kind of big. She looks big on camera, too. Hey, Bree, what you got something to say? Huh? Okay. Yeah. On the other side of the ball, Washington, they have a bye, but in the playoffs, they got the Rams, Jets, and San Francisco. That's murderer's row. If you got Washington stock, man, I'm sorry to hear about it, but Sam Howell, he still is pretty good. He saved his fantasy day this past week with a rushing touchdown. But 2 rushing touchdowns, that really saved his day. But he did have a bad game against Dolphins. It kind of just shows you how elite the Dolphins defense is right now. So I am excited because I have the Dolphins defense and some good matchups with the Jets in the semifinals if I can get a bye. And I think one other good matchup too. Oh no, it's the Jets in the first round, which I probably won't be in because it's looking like I can get a bye. But he's got Tennessee and Jets the next 2 weeks. Then they got Dallas in the semifinals, who will probably be starting the Packers that week against Carolina. But Brian Robinson got banged up in this game. I think he'll be back after the bye. But I would want to be staying away from every Washington player in the playoff run. So he has a bye right now, and then going into week 15 into playoffs, you're going to see a team that you probably want to stay away from. Moving on to the Texans-Broncos game, and I talked a lot already about Nico Collins. I'll talk a little bit about the running back situation. Singletary and Pierce, you're going to want to stay away from that now. It's unpredictable. It's 50-50, and I just would want to stay away from that situation in general. And obviously I'm speaking from a DraftKings perspective here, but in a week-to-week, stay away from them unless you have to start one of them in your flex, but just temper your expectations because it's not a good situation. Sorry, guys. Bree. Bree. Come. Get inside. Come. Stop. What are you doing? So, temper your expectations with those 2 running backs. Nico Collins is an absolute home run, and you're going to be starting C.J. Stroud if you have him, unless you have better options. Most likely you don't. Cleveland, Tennessee is a very nice playoff schedule. Cleveland's going to be tough to beat, but as you can see, Matthew Stafford and the Rams did a pretty good job against them. You got to consider Denzel Ward was out. He'll be back for Cleveland. On the Broncos side of the ball, Javonte has been pretty disappointing lately. He is the lead horse in that team, but they have a Detroit, New England Chargers playoff schedule that's very difficult. You're going to still be starting Sutton as your third receiver, and you're okay with that feeling. and you're probably going to be starting Javante in your flex, but you're not excited about it, to be completely honest. That really covers Denver. That's really the only people you'd be starting. Stay away from Russell Wilson as much as you can, unless he's a spot start, like for a guy on your on a bye week. You don't want to be starting Russell Wilson in the playoffs. Moving on to the Seahawks Cowboys. I've talked enough about Pollard on the show that I'm not going to continue to talk about him. I will say that Dallas in the playoffs have a pretty good schedule. It's Buffalo, Miami, Detroit. I think those are all three games that they're going to get in shootouts in. So you're excited about Pollard in those games. You're excited about all Cowboys assets in that games, and that includes Brandon Cooks. You're going to be starting every single player for Dallas in that playoff run. They have one of those kind of schedules that you're going to win fantasy championships with, and that goes for Dak Prescott as well. On the Seattle side of the ball, I think you got to monitor what's going on with Charbonnet. I haven't followed that closely, but Zach, you got Kenneth Walker coming back. In a perfect situation, I think for Kenneth Walker holders is that Charbonnet is considered hurt bad, and he's going to be the starter when he comes back full on for their playoff run against Philly, Tennessee, and Pittsburgh. But that's a horrible, horrible schedule for Seattle. I've said that they had the worst schedule for a long time when I was looking at Seattle assets for trades several weeks ago. So outside of DK Metcalf and Lockett, and possibly even Jackson Smith, who had 11 targets this past week, I would be trying to stay away from Seattle players, speaking from a DraftKings perspective. But, with the game that Metcalf put on, he's a must start. I think Geno Smith against Philly and the first round of the playoffs could be an interesting start for you if you have a difficult matchup. Let's give you an example, like Justin Fields playing against the Cleveland Browns in Week 15. I might consider starting Geno Smith over him against Philly. It'd be ballsy, but I think it's something you can do. And those matchups, Metcalf and Smith and Lockett are guys that you definitely are going to start. I think Smith is a start that you're only going to be making if you're desperate. And I think Lockett is only a start that you're going to make if he's your third receiver. That really does it. I'm going to go talk a little bit about the Diamond, and then I'm going to get out of here. So in the Diamond, I got a victory. The Criminals had an upset. Got upset. Still legit. Should have gotten upset, but he squeaked out another victory, man. He's been lucky more than a few times this year, man. He's been very lucky this year, I will say. Still legit. He squeaked out a victory, and Korea lost a heartbreaker, the number 1 seed in a game, a really high-scoring matchup here. You see the highest in the slate, which made Korea down to 9-4, me at 9-4, Lee stayed at 9-4, Criminals went down to 8-5, Mahomes won and went to 8-5, and Whoopsie beat the number 1 seed to go to 7-6. This is looking like what I think is going to be the seeding here. I believe that Korea and I will both win this week, getting us both to both a bye. And still legit, Criminals and Mahomes, that can all switch around a little bit, but those are going to be your seeds there. And then I think Whoopsie is going to hold on here and be the 6. He's got a great team with Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and Ferguson. He's got that trio stack that he's just really relying on Dak. And Dak's got such a great schedule, and he's on fire that's a team that's going to be really scary to face in the playoffs. Looks like Mahomes is, all 5 of us are a lock. It's just a matter of the order. I have, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Nico Collins, Puka Nacua, Tony Pollard, Raheem Mostert, Taysom Hill, and DeAndre Swift. This is a team that can definitely win a championship this year. I'm really excited to get into the playoffs. As long as I can stay healthy, hopefully DeAndre Swift's okay. I'm gonna possibly win the league this year. I think I have as good of a chance as anybody, especially if I can get a bye. Taysom Hill did it what I wanted him to. I think it could have been even a bigger day if they gave him those 2 rushes at the inch-yard line. I was praying that, the Saints did the tush push with Taysom Hill in those kind of situations, and I don't really understand why teams don't smarten up and do that. It's just, to me, it's so stupid that it's such bad coaching that you don't copy that with one of your good players, because it's you just can't stop it. And it's not much more than just having a guy who's powerful at quarterback like Jalen Hurts, who can squat a lot. And that's what makes it good. And then the push, right? Obviously, they have a good offensive line too, but there's no reason that teams can't duplicate that in their own way with certain players. And I thought the Saints could do that with Taysom Hill, and even just running the ball with him in general at the inch-yard line. You can't be mad at Kamara, at working with Kamara. But overall, I'm happy with Taysom Hill being my tight end, and I think that it's going to be a good stretch for him there. I'll see you guys Thursday. It's going to be a snoozer on Thursday, so we'll have to deal with that game with the Steelers and Patriots. But I'll still put on a show for you guys, and we'll see what happens on the waiver wire this week. Good luck to you in Week 14. Good luck to you in the fantasy football playoffs. Peace out, y'all.